You're listening to Ecto Portal, a journey into the unknown with Anthony Anderson and Verna Wilson.
I hope that you are seated comfortably, with the light turned down and the curtains drawn.
Ho, ho, ho! Welcome to a special edition of Ecto Portal. Another journey into the mysterious, the unexplained, the unexplored. I'm Anthony Anderson, your host, and no, this is not Santa Claus. And I'm here with my co-host,
Verna Wilson.
And she's not Santa Claus either.
I'm not Santa Claus, I'm not the helper.
No.
No. So, how do we officially describe this particular episode?
Well, this is going to be... it's not like we don't do odd topics every week anyway. And by the way, folks, besides this special episode, there's our regular Wednesday episode, which you'll be able to hear tomorrow. But for this one, we do odd topics, and this is kind of a themed odd topic because it's the holidays, it's Christmas time.
And Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays wherever you are.
That's right.
Yeah, we all wish you a good one, and we don't wish you to be in Crazy Christmas Town.
No.
Because we've been there.
That's tonight, Adventures in Crazy Christmas Town. And the reason we titled the episode that is because we're going to present all kinds of unusual facts, rituals, traditions, stories, all surrounding the holiday Christmas season.
Yes, and there's a lot of surprising stories that people haven't heard of, and that we collected them, and we think you'll enjoy them.
We will.
Yeah.
We think you will definitely enjoy them. So if you're gonna get some eggnog with a little bit of whiskey in it, sit by the fire.
That sounds good. I want some of that.
Hold on. Let me get the fireplace going here, Verna.
Okay.
There we go.
Where's your Yule log?
There we go. Now I got the fire going. It's nice and toasty warm in here, and we're gonna start off. So you have some. You want to start with some traditions?
Yeah, there's a tradition that my mother has been telling me about since I was a kid, and I finally got to see it when I was 9 years old visiting Mexico. It's a tradition where in Mexico, the kids, instead of leaving gifts under the tree, the kids leave their shoes by the door. And in the morning, instead of Santa Claus, Jesus comes, and Jesus comes, and ho ho. He drops toys and candy and actually coins in there inside the shoe, and the kids empty their shoes and they get all their goodies.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember when I was there, Linda and I saw the kids all gathering their shoes and putting them by the door. And I was just a little kid. I didn't understand it. And I turned around to one of my older cousins. I said, "Is Santa Claus going to leave you a gift in those shoes?" She goes, "Santa Claus? No, Jesus." And I'm like, okay. And my mother told me, she goes, when I was a kid, my parents couldn't afford much money. So I only saw one piece of candy and 1 penny in my shoe. And I used to wonder why Jesus didn't leave me in more.
Jesus, why are you so cheap?
Exactly. And if my mother heard that, she would laugh.
You're like, don't you like my mom? Thanks,
yeah,
Jesus.
and I realize in Mexico that custom is normal. People practice that every Christmas. But when I told it to a few people who've never heard of it, they go, "Oh, that's weird."
So you told it to me, and I thought it was weird. And then after a few days, I'm like, I have heard of that.
Yeah.
There's some European customs that do that.
They're kind of
well.
similar,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. But it was very cool as a kid, though, seeing it for yourself and seeing.
It's kind of like the stocking premise, where instead of getting gifts and toys in your stocking, you're getting gifts and toys in your
shoes. But you know, if I know this sounds like a weird adult thing, but if it were me and I were going to be doing that as a grown-up, I would clean out my shoe first just to make sure that...
Well, you would think everything's going to be wrapped, I would hope. I don't. No one wants ribbon candy stuck to the soles of your shoe. Just saying.
I know.
That's kind of nasty. Dr. Scholl's ribbon candy. Sign me up. That'd be a cool ritual, though.
Oh, Dr. Scholl's ribbon candy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And all that image that brings.
Brought it out in me.
But if I had kids, I would start a tradition like that.
Yeah, I think.
Or I would start doing it, because besides the stocking, you can still have the stocking by the fireplace.
Sure.
But it'd be kind of cool to start that ritual about you never know what you're going to find in your shoes.
I think it's very cool.
Now, did you say that kids had to put something in their shoes, or just have their shoes?
No, they just had their shoes, but they put it by the door.
Oh, okay.
It has to be by the door, because supposedly Jesus will come in the house.
Jesus don't have time to come into your house, so put that stuff by the door.
Well, not outside the door, but like inside the door.
No, I know, but
near it.
Jesus don't have time to come into your house. He's just going to open the door, drop
the
your
stuff,
shoes,
and then go on to the next place.
Santa can do all that other stuff.
Yeah, well, they didn't like Santa back then, but this was, I don't know if Santa is popular there now, but not then he wasn't.
I don't know.
So, yeah. So anyway, I thought I'd share that.
And if Krampus takes your kids, you're still going to have the toys and money and stuff in your shoes, and you can keep it.
Well, okay, well, only if, as long as Krampus gives them back until he's nice.
Now, let me
I thought he only took naughty kids.
Let me ask you this question. If Jesus brings toys and candy and money and puts it in your shoes,
right?
Santa Claus comes down the chimney and leaves you presents. Krampus comes and takes you and puts your ass in a sack and beats you and takes you to hell if you're bad. Is there a schedule that these people all adhere to? I mean, does Jesus come first?
It's a good question. It's a good question. I mean, do they sit and wait all year and figure out who are the jerks, who are the good kids?
They're like, look, Jesus, we're going to take the east side, you take the west side, and then we'll swap. Because I'm pretty sure
that's a good. I'm
pretty sure Jesus doesn't want to meet up with Krampus.
Well, I can tell you this much: this defies the old song about Santa saying he knows when you've been naughty, knows when you've been nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think any kid's really a jerk. I just think that they misbehave, they're naughty, and but I think the kid would rather behave during Christmas if they really believed in all that. But
maybe Jesus kicks back with a beer with Krampus and Santa Claus.
I always, that's a good question. I've never heard that question. Are they all on a schedule? That's a good one, Anthony.
That's a lot of activity in one night.
That is a lot in one night.
For the whole world?
Oh my God, yeah, for the whole world. I mean,
does Jesus have elves? I know he has apostles, but I'm just saying that's a lot of coins.
Well,
and
maybe
candy
he
and
has
toys.
assistants.
But who carries all that?
I know. I mean, with Santa, they've talked about assistants for him before, besides his reindeers and Rudolph.
Maybe he makes the apostles carry like bags and bags of it. And how does he? Okay, I'm asking too many questions. Like, how does he fly? How does he get around the world? Santa Claus has it covered. He has magic reindeer.
Yeah, and I always wondered if Krampus, if he ever took the wrong kid who didn't mean to be naughty and found out he was nice and returned him back and said, okay, forget it.
He eats them too. I heard he eats them and he also just takes them to hell. But do you really think Krampus is going to, I made a mistake, let me bring the kid back. Do you think Krampus is going to do that?
From what I've heard about him, probably not.
Maybe Jesus files a lawsuit later.
Anthony, I hate to say this to you, but you're getting into this a little deep.
Well, I never thought about this stuff before.
They're all good questions, but...
All right, what else have you got tradition-wise?
Okay.
We'll get past the shoes.
I do have some, the only other ones that I really have are from my parents.
Okay.
But the one from my dad is more Depression-era traditions, but that's not really anything mysterious or spooky.
Or
paranormal. So I probably won't. We'll skip.
No, go ahead
Okay, I'll share it, but I'll be very brief. When we were kids and we were they were preparing for Christmas. If kids, sometimes we can be bratty, and me and Linda, we're still bratty.
No, never. You two would never be bratty.
Oh no, not us.
No,
we've driven you crazy being bratty, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad would turn around to us. He would say, "Girls," he said, "you have to be nice. Otherwise, instead of toys, you're going to get onions and potatoes." in your stockings for Christmas.
Onions. What did Linda say?
And Linda and I would just look at him, and we didn't believe him.
You're like, why would you give us onions and potatoes?
Yeah, we just looked at him like, really? Okay. I mean, they always talk about coal in their stockings, but during the Depression, where he was from, if a kid was poor, onions and potatoes were usually what they gave them.
That's really sad.
That is sad.
Because then they would turn around and take them from you to make food.
Right, and of course...
I guess you'd eat, though, so that's good.
But unless the kid was starving, and then it probably would be welcome, but, most kids would rather get toys. They don't want onions and potatoes in their sacks.
I wouldn't think so.
I mean, if you want to give me a bag of onions and potatoes, I'd like that, but...
I would make a stew.
I would, too.
I'd be like, Mom, look at these awesome potatoes and onions I have. If we had a little beef and some carrots, we can make an awesome stew.
Yeah, but... That's you and I.
Yeah.
We like cooking, but
I do. I would just do that.
But when you're, how old are you? 7 years old?
I would just look blankly at my parent and go, "My God, they're insane. They've gone insane."
Well, I bet you they did. But it's sad. I mean, it's sad, but that was but that's what happened. He said only when the kids were naughty, but.
What did they get when they were like good? Apples and oranges, I guess.
I don't know. They probably got toys instead.
Oh.
But
God, all the toys and the money and stuff's in my shoes, so.
Oh, no. This is Nebraska, United States. They didn't do the shoes. They did the stockings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jesus didn't come to their house.
Jesus didn't come to their house. Santa Claus was popular.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I just thought I'd share that. That's funny, too. I mean, because I never heard anybody else say onions and potatoes. They always go, oh, you get coal in your stockings. I said, no, my dad said it was onions and potatoes.
Yeah. And where would your dad go get coal? I mean, I guess Nebraska. You might not even there. I don't know if you'd find
It was
coal.
Nebraska. Well, he was born in 1912.
But I could see you finding coal in like Pennsylvania or somewhere back east.
Well,
maybe.
I mean, they ran a farm, so they had to use coal sometime, to heat up stuff.
That's true. Maybe you could find coal. That's what's funny about.
I mean, they weren't that backwards.
I wonder. Listen to us laugh about depressive eras. Think about it now, though. Millennials, if you said, I'm going to put coal in your stocking, how many would go, why would you ever put coal in my stocking?
Then you'd have to explain it to them, just like we're explaining now. So maybe if somebody doesn't understand where that comes from, now we can tell them. It's depression.
But in the Depression era, coal would be welcome. That means you're going to
so
have
would
heat.
onions and potatoes, but it doesn't mean you want it as a kid.
That means you're going to have a good dinner and it's going to be warm
And it's going to be warm. Well, exactly, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so continuing our adventures in crazy Christmas town, there's a bit of rituals for you. And now I'm going to bestow upon you something you never would have heard of, you never would have thought of, but it's actually a little based in reality. I'm going to tell you about the old bones of Santa Claus. Yes, believe it or not, there are many churches that claim to hold the actual bones of jolly old Saint Nick. The Basilica di San Nicola in Bari, Italy, had their remains stolen from the small town of Myra in today's Turkey, and were interred in the crypt in 1089 and left untouched until 1953, when the tomb was opened up. The bones were leaking an oily substance called the manna of St. Nicholas. That has the healing powers that people gather annually to receive.
So they still gather to put that oily stuff on them?
to get healed. St. Nicholas went far. I don't mean just around the world.
Well, I
His
mean,
oily healing substance.
I'm going to be spoiling this for a lot of people, but that's oily stuff from a tomb, from old bones. That may not be
probably bone marrow.
It may not be sanitary.
It's probably bone marrow burn.
Does it? I hope it doesn't. Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Church of St. Nicholas in Venice has fragments left behind when those same bones were stolen from Myra, and to make matters worse, more confusing, a group of archaeologists in Turkey claim to have recently discovered what they believe is the tomb of Nicholas beneath a church in Antalya, where old St. Nick is said to have lived. Now, Santa Claus remains pop up at all kinds of places. Teeth and finger bones are spread out in a dozen churches in places like Russia, France, and Palestine territories. One church claimed to have some of these bone relics was the St. Nicholas Orthodox Church in New York City, which was, of course, destroyed when the World Trade Center collapsed on 9/11, and the bones fragments were never found.
That's sad. But I mean, his finger and everything. I mean, what did they do? Tear the man apart?
Well, well, I would imagine that that's exactly it, because
Okay.
I remember from Catholic school,
Uh-huh.
almost every Catholic church has a bone fragment of a saint
They do.
inside the altar.
I've heard about that.
So, and based on your theory of tearing them apart, that's exactly what they would have done.
Okay, all right.
Because it's a sacred relic, so having a fragment of the saint in your church brings
Blessings.
macabre holiness to your church.
Yeah, it brings blessings. I think there's even some churches here in the Bay Area that have bone fragments of saints. And I don't know which ones, but I think there are a few.
When I went to Catholic school
Uh-huh.
in St. Catherine's in Seattle, North Seattle, they have a bone fragment in their altar as well.
Of who?
I don't remember which saint it was, but I remember the priest telling me, and I was just, I mean, you know me, I'm just intrigued. Like,
I
this
would
is
have
a
been, yeah.
crazy, weird ritual, but why would they ever do that? You know, when you're little, you ask all kinds of questions.
I actually wouldn't mind viewing it or going near it.
They don't really let the public see it. It's like in a compartment that you
Right.
pull out and put inside, and it's locked up.
Okay.
You're not going to have like fragments. So I'm sure some churches probably have like a big clear window, small window.
I've
that
seen
you can
that,
see
yeah.
it. But our church didn't. You actually had a compartment.
Oh, okay.
All right. Continuing on with Santa Claus's bones. Ironically, a pelvis fragment is said to reside in St. Martha of Bethany Church in Morton Grove, Illinois. And unlike many others who claim to have a piece of the saint, this one had tests that were done that do support this claim.
Wow.
So it actually was St. Nicholas's DNA bones.
Wow.
Oxford University has even carbon tested bone fragments from a church in France, and the results were it was from the 4th century. St. Nicholas is said to have died in 340 AD, and this would correlate with their findings. Oxford now wants to test all those other churches' bones to see if they actually match the DNA in this particular one.
I think that's a great idea.
Why not?
Yeah, to be authentic, sure.
I mean, if they don't match, if they're all different, then obviously they're all fake. But how will you tell which one's the real St. Nicholas?
But you know, I would be interested in even seeing what the fake ones are, because they could be somebody else that they had confused at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think you could really historically say that it's St. Nicholas.
Yeah.
Just because you DNA'd a bone fragment from 340 AD doesn't necessarily mean it was St. Nicholas.
No, unless
claims.
they really know his DNA and matched it.
But you're going to have claims in the church. Oh, this is it. You know, you never know. You never really know unless you have DNA that you know belongs to St. Nicholas and
Right.
compare it.
Yeah.
You're never going to really know.
Especially if it's that old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're going to go ahead and go into some fun facts of St. Nicholas. So, the ruins of an ancient Byzantine church in Demre, Turkey, hold what is believed to be the original tomb of St. Nicholas, the 4th century bishop whose name has been associated with gift giving. And his miraculous and charitable acts were well known in his time. It's said that he made anonymous donations of gold coins to a poor family, saving the daughter's life from a life of slavery and prostitution.
Oh.
Yeah, I think
How nice.
that is nice, actually,
Yes.
because a lot of poor people didn't have a lot of opportunities back then.
Actually that's a pretty good gift.
Yeah, I think so too. And a medieval tradition grew around this story, leading to the gift-giving custom of St. Nicholas Eve on December 5th. So now it's the 24th, 25th.
So let me get this straight. We celebrate and give gifts to each other so that the younger women in the family aren't sold to prostitution that night.
That's right.
Okay, continue.
Well, actually...
Just a little weird.
Well, it's a little weird, but think about it this way. It's more about poor families who don't have much opportunities,
Yeah.
and they didn't have a way to get a better life for themselves. So he felt bad for them, and he gave them... It was unusual for rich people to be that giving at the time, I think. Yeah. Well, in another legend, a butcher was luring children into his home to murder them, cut them up, and sell them in barrels as food during a time of famine. Weirdo. When an angel told St. Nicholas of these atrocities, the bishop went to the butcher's time just in time to restore life to 3 boys before they could be eaten. Oh, my God. I don't even want to think about how cut up they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's Christmas dinner.
That's gross. Okay. Though his name is not included in the records, history claims that the good saint attended the Council of Nicaea in 325, and he was apparently kicked out for slapping the heretic Arius.
Okay.
Wow. So they had a slap.
Bitch slap.
Fight. They had a bitch slap fight. Yeah. I wonder what Arius did to piss him off.
I don't know.
Yeah. So upon his death, commonly accepted as December 6th of some year between 330 and 352, Nicholas was interned in the church where he served in what was then called Myra. He then became known as the patron saint of sailors, travelers, thieves, and children. Christians made pilgrimages from all over to visit his tomb.
Interesting.
So, yeah, and I've heard before that he was at the Council of Nicaea in 325, but I don't know.
That's interesting.
None of us, I guess nobody really knows, but I've heard more than one source that he was there, so he might have been there and they may not have recorded it.
That's true.
Okay, so what do you have here?
Since I thought this was apropos, since I used to be a volunteer in Alcatraz for about 6 years.
Yeah.
I've heard lots of stories, whether they're true or false. I've heard both sides.
Sure.
This concerns a haunted Christmas feast at Alcatraz. As we know, the island of Alcatraz off the coast of San Francisco has a long and spooky history. In its earlier days, Native Americans allegedly used to banish miscreants to the island as punishment, where they were reportedly plagued by local spirits. They also they would used to collect pelican eggs from the island too and take them back. Pelicans used to do nothing but pelicans on the island back a long time ago.
So what do they do with the pelican eggs?
They would eat them.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
But the Native Americans, it was a giant rock. It wasn't flat like Alcatraz is today because the military flattened a lot of it out. It was a giant rock. So the Native Americans thought, we can't live on this thing. But the pelicans did, and they were plentiful with eggs, so the Native Americans could collect eggs.
That makes sense.
But then they would also banish people because you can't escape. But I would imagine, I don't know if that's so true though, the Native American couldn't swim to Angel Island from there, but that's just me.
I've heard both sides. I've heard that they were good swimmers, and then I've heard they were good with boating and traveling. Like
they would have to be good swimmers in the bay.
In the bay, yeah, especially if they lived near.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe that about banishing people to the island for punishment. Alcatraz, of course, became a notorious federal prison in 1934, housing criminals such as Al Capone, before it was shut down in 1963. Today, visitors to the island report hearing screams, the clanging of metal doors, the sound of voices within the walls. One of the more famous tales associated with the island supposedly occurred in the 1940s, when Warden James Johnston held a Christmas Day party at his residence for the staff at the prison. The good cheer is said to have been brought to a swift halt when an apparition sporting mutton chop whiskers and a gray suit appeared. The temperature in the room plummeted and the fire blew out, before returning to normal when the spirit disappeared about a minute later. The rattled guards were too scared to stay in the residence, and the rest of the Christmas celebration ended abruptly. Now,
wonder if they thought it was a prisoner loose.
I'm going to point this out first because I
Okay.
know for a fact.
All right.
Warden Johnston didn't hire guards to work in his house. He enlisted inmates, the ones he trusted, and to learn a good trade on how to clean, how to fix things. Because he was a warden that really thought rehabilitation was important. And
Sure.
in fact, he was a pioneer. He got rid of stripes on all prisoner outfits in the U.S.
Huh.
And his idea was you should go to prison to rethink, relearn, pay your penance. Thus, it's called penitentiary. That's where they get that from. And learn a trade so that when you do go out, you can repay back your wrongful deed in society by actually applying yourself to be a good citizen.
That's what they're trying to do now. And back then, I imagine it was a very innovative idea.
But he had to fight a lot of people because they were like, no, they're rotten, they're prisons, they're criminals, let them rot in prison. But he's like, well, why are we housing people to rot? Why don't we help them get better? He was a pretty religious man, but he also would hire prisoners to work in the warden's house, to be servants for dinner, cook, whatever. And there were 5 fireplaces in the warden's house. It's burned down now. You can see it on the corner of the island.
Sure.
So the fact that they saw the apparition doesn't surprise me. The description, the mutton whiskers, sounds like it is the Civil War era.
That would make sense, Civil War era, yeah.
There were defectors of the military were kept on the island.
I believe that, yeah.
Those that opposed Lincoln were actually kept as inmates on the island.
Wow.
So there was all kinds of, there's soldiers on the island from the Civil War. There was a citadel fort on the top where the cell house now
I've heard of all that, yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me to see a ghost like that.
Yeah.
That wouldn't really surprise me.
It makes more sense that you would guess what kind of era that this ghost was from. Yeah.
Exactly. Do you have one to tell as well, right?
Yeah. Now this has to do with Hever Castle in Kent in the UK. It's the childhood home of Anne Boleyn, and I've always wanted to visit there, and I've always thought that Hever Castle has ghost activity.
Yeah,
and
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, and also, yeah, absolutely. And also, I also feel that it has pockets of time that you can go back into when you're at Hever, because some people have reported visiting there and feeling like they're walking in another era and then kind of feeling back to normal. But anyway, we'll go into that later. But this one is about Anne Boleyn, and of course, she's the second wife of King Henry VIII. To marry Anne, Henry spent years seeking a divorce from his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. He went to sever England's relationship with the Catholic Church, and he changed the course of British history, especially when it comes to religion.
Definitely.
Yeah. So despite the lengths that he went to get her, Henry soon grew tired of Anne, and choosing to believe the idle gossip surrounding her, had her beheaded in 1536. So a number of reports they exist of the ghost of Anne Boleyn, but perhaps the most affecting one is the version said to haunt her childhood home, Hever Castle in Kent. And some say that every Christmas Eve, the figure of Anne Boleyn can be seen slowly gliding across the bridge over the river toward her family home, where she was at her happiest. And that wouldn't surprise me one bit, because this was before she even went to court in France and for Henry, and her life was probably peaceful and family oriented back then.
Well, it's a place she liked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you have another one that takes place in England, right?
I do. The Headless Horseman at Roos Hall. Roos Hall is in Suffolk. Lays claim to being one of the most haunted houses in England. The 16th century hall has a number of sinister connections, including a gruesome hanging tree, which is an oak tree planted at the site of the old gibbet where numerous criminals were hung. To make things even spookier, inside one of the building's cupboards, the mark of a devil's cloven hoof is said to be imprinted, but perhaps the most dramatic haunting is supposed to happen every Christmas Eve. Legend has it that a headless horseman clatters down the driveway with his 4 black horses pulling a phantom coach, terrifying anybody who witnesses him.
I've actually heard of this before, but I just wonder, why does it only occur on Christmas Eve?
I don't know, but we know that as far as people have, it could be, what is it, the loop, a haunting that shows in a loop. A memory haunting.
That's true too, yeah.
It's hard to say. Why do people see the same haunted person in the same place at a certain time all over again? I don't think we could ever explain that, why that would happen.
Unless something happened around that time of the year, and that's where the strongest memory comes from that, and that's why it occurs again.
Residual haunting.
Residual haunting, yeah.
I'm like, why can't I remember that? It's so common. Residual haunting, where something replays from the past, but it isn't necessarily intelligent and interactive in the present.
Right. That makes sense for this one. Now, we have another one that takes place in the U.S. in a haunted hotel. It's the haunted dining room at the Crescent Hotel. So the Crescent Hotel is located in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. It was built in 1886. It's rumored to harbor numerous ghosts, which doesn't surprise me. And they seem to be playful, especially during the holidays. And one Christmas, the staff came down to set up the dining room, only to find that the Christmas tree had been moved from one side of the room to the other. I guess they had other decorating ideas. So another year, all of the menus in the dining room have been scattered around the room. Probably pissed off that they're not going to eat there.
Probably.
Other visitors have reported seeing groups of ghostly dancers clad in Victoria-era clothing whirling around the deserted dance floor.
Oh, so things are still active.
I guess they are. I've heard of ballrooms and stuff where people witness noise and music and parties and in places nearby here, too.
Yeah. I mean, I've experienced that myself in Virginia City at the Mackey Mansion, where I awoke to the sounds of a party going on downstairs.
You've talked about that.
But there was nobody else in the house but me and one other person who was upstairs as well.
Wow. Yeah, you talked about that. That's interesting. But, yeah, it's kind of like this.
But with this one, it's interesting because it's almost a combination. Well, the Christmas tree moving to the other side of the room, that isn't a residual.
Mm-hmm.
That's an intelligent, interactive, I'm moving this tree over here because I don't like where you put it.
Mm-hmm.
The dancing of Victorian era sounds residual.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
It
people
does.
Witness and see them, but they're not necessarily interacting with them. They're not looking at them. They're not talking to them. They're not, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They're just witnessing that reoccurring moment of residual from the past.
Mm-hmm. You know, I've had some thoughts about residuals and memory hauntings like this. I won't take too long explaining it here. But I've always felt that our strongest memories can leave behind an imprint, even when you're still alive. And people can probably witness when you're not there, something to do with you, even when you're still alive. And I'm wondering...
Well, emotion's a powerful thing, so
exactly.
I could see where that would be associated.
Yeah, so we usually hear about it when it's a haunting after somebody's been long dead, but
yeah.
I believe they can happen both ways.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I have another one from England.
Okay.
Ghostly gathering of kings at Walwell's Castle. Oh, it's Poland, actually.
Poland, yeah.
Poland's Walwell Royal Castle was built on the Walwell Hill in the 1500s. Within the hill lies a deep cave known as Dragon's Den. Legend has it that the great dragon once lived there, terrorizing the locals. Prince Krak bravely vanquished the dragon and brought peace to Poland. To memorialize this event, a statue of the dead dragon now stands in the cave. But if you go deeper in the cave, and you come to yet another chamber, and it is here that on December 24th every year, yes folks, that's today, all along the long gone kings of Poland are said to meet and hold a spectral special council.
Well, there's two things about that. First of all, they talk a lot about dragons back then.
They do. Well,
and I wonder if they really existed and they just gone extinct and they were just like... And what creatures, what were they really as creatures? And the second thing, has anybody tried to go into that cave and see that council for themselves?
I bet you they have. I'm sure they have in Poland by now. Going back to the dragons, who's to say that there wasn't some kind of mutated reptile creature that still existed from the dinosaur age?
That's what I thought too.
That was still alive, and living in forests, or not, maybe not gigantic as a dragon, but a small reptilian sort of lizard animal.
Like the Komodo dragon?
But bigger.
Yeah.
It could be bigger.
Right.
And because people, when they tell legends, they exaggerate it, make it bigger. I fought this beast. It was huge. It was big as a house. When in reality, it was, no bigger than your knee.
Like an iguana.
But it still could have had teeth. It could have been deadly. But you fought and killed the beast. Now imagine telling these stories over time. It's going to get bigger. It's going to get better. It was a dragon. It was a flying beast. It could have jumped out of a tree.
It's a good tale for a winter night.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
It could be just some kind of generational dinosaur that survived in the forests, and you never know.
And there were a lot of creatures back then that don't exist anymore.
Yeah, but I mean, people think, oh, dragons didn't exist. Well, no, maybe dragons didn't exist the way we described them, but maybe very similar creatures that did a lot less magical things did exist.
Right, and to me, if something like that creature was going to attack you or was dangerous, it was probably threatened and more afraid of you than
exactly.
than
They
you could be.
could have stumbled across it. It could have stumbled across its cave that it lived in, and it was like shocked and wanted to defend its cave. You never know.
That's true. You know, and there's also tales of other living creatures and plant life that used to exist on a lot of these ancient Greek islands. They brought back one of these plants, and it was actually a red lily, a beautiful red lily. Yeah, I've never seen a red lily.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, and I don't know about the creatures, but they've detected DNA and figured what it must have looked like and studied it. And these creatures don't exist anymore. But I can imagine. But God, can you imagine back then? What?
That's cool.
Yeah, it is.
All right, do you want to tell one more?
Sure. It's called the Mistletoe Bride. I've actually heard of this one at Bramshill House. And this took place in the early 17th century. A young woman named Anne, she was to be married on Christmas Day at Bramshill House in Hampshire, England. So after the ceremony and feast, as was tradition at the time, the guests were all set to carry the bride to the bedchamber. She suggested a game to be played and asked for a 5-minute head start before the guests came to find her. Everyone searched long and hard for Anne, but no sign of her could be found. At first they thought she played a merry trick, but soon a sense of unease fell over the guests. The bridegroom, Lord Lovell, was distraught, and guests began to whisper that she must have fled. And so days, weeks, and months and years passed. Lord Lovell never stopped looking for his bride. And one day, some 50 years after her disappearance, Lord Lovell was up in the huge attic of the sprawling mansion, and he began tapping on the oak paneling. And as he knocked, a long-hidden secret door sprung open, and inside he found an ornate wooden chest, and he pried it open because it was very heavy, wooden lid. And there, still in her wedding dress and clutching her mistletoe bouquet, were the skeletal remains of his bride. That's sad. Can you imagine how awful?
Ugh.
The scratch marks on the inside of the lid of the chest attested to her desperate but futile effort to free herself from her hiding space. And the story appears in many variations, but Bramshill House is thought to be the most likely site.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I've heard of this, and it's a sad story.
Well, you got to think, if it's in the attic, behind a special secret door, inside a locked chest, even if you were crying out,
yeah,
unless you're in that attic or right next to it, you're never going to hear it.
That was not a wise choice.
And she would probably lose air. She would probably die pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's awful hide and seek.
Yeah, don't do that. If you're going to hide inside the secret passage
people can
in the
find
wall,
you easy.
But don't hide in the chest in the secret passage in the wall.
No, because I mean, yikes.
All right, I have one more.
Okay.
An apparition of a murdered highwayman in Kent. One Christmas Eve, near the close of the 18th century, a notorious highwayman named Gilbert is said to have stopped a coach and horses on the Hawkhurst Road in Marden, Kent. The coach contained a young lady and her father, and Gilbert ordered them out onto the road. Just as the girls stepped out, the horses bolted, taking the coach and her father with them. The young lady was left alone on the dark road with the highwayman, and as she looked into his face, she recognized him as the very same highwayman who had murdered her brother some years earlier. Horrified, she drew a hidden knife from her bag and stabbed Gilbert in the side, fleeing into the bushes. When the horses were calmed and the coach returned a little while later, the men discovered the bloody body of the highwayman and buried him at the side of the road. When villagers found the woman in the forest the next day, she'd gone completely mad. They avoided that spot in the road for many years, and it's said that every Christmas Eve, the bloody scene is silently replayed to all that passed through. Again, residual.
She must have been freaking out, because if he murdered her brother, she must have felt threatened and didn't know what he'd do, so she thought she'd act first.
I know, I wondered the same thing.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre.
It's awful. And they buried him on the side of the road? Okay,
Yay.
they didn't bother to report it. They didn't bother. Okay, well, people had different ways of handling things back then, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. So those are some very those are some great stories in there.
I have some crazy Christmas related stories.
Okay.
One is about the spontaneous combustion of Matilda Rooney. A farmhand named John Larson spent Christmas 1885 with his employers, Patrick and Matilda Rooney. an elderly couple who lived just outside of Seneca, Illinois. They shared several drinks before Larson retired for the evening and went upstairs to bed. Sometimes during the night, he underwent a coughing fit and had trouble breathing, but soon drifted back to sleep. When Larson woke up on Christmas morning, the traces of soot were on his pillow. Larson went downstairs and was shocked to find Patrick dead in his bedroom. Matilda was nowhere to be found. Later that day, Larson wandered into the kitchen and found a large blackened hole in the floor. It rested alongside what appeared to be the charred remains of a human foot.
That's gross.
A pile of ash was inside the hole, and that was all that was left of Matilda Rooney. It seemed that Matilda was the victim of spontaneous human combustion, which caused her entire body to catch fire and burn to ashes. The estimated temperature of the fire that consumed her was 1,400 degrees Celsius, but there were no other signs of fire damage other than that spot. It was later determined that Patrick had died of smoke inhalation. This explained Larson's coughing fit during the night. He was spared from death because he slept behind a closed door on the second floor. Even though there was speculation that Larson could have murdered Matilda, it seemed impossible for him to have started such a blazing fire without damaging the rest of the house. It's possible the excessive alcohol consumption caused Matilda Rooney to spontaneously combust. A prominent local legend was that she suffered divine retribution for daring to drink so much on Christmas Eve. So, folks, that's your cue to get up and get another eggnog and whiskey.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, everybody drinks on Christmas Eve. Why just her?
Yeah, I don't. You know, they
well, not everybody, but most people do.
I think they still don't have an answer for internal combustion, though.
No, but I've actually heard a few historical cases about that. It's rare, but it is weird. I mean, who does that?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. Who does that?
Who does that?
Now, I wanted to talk about some of the customs that we're used to, what the real custom came from, and they're not. Some of them origins, yeah. Some of them are not that pretty. Like,
okay, we've been talking about bones and internal combustion and stuff. I'm sure that'll fit right in.
Okay. Well, we all know that.
What do they expect from us?
Yeah, exactly. This is Ecto Portal, so of course.
Yeah.
So the tradition of hanging toys and treats is largely Germanic in origin, but we're going to talk about the Christmas ornaments, where that came from.
Yeah.
And these were actually known to be, those started in the 17th century. They were actually originally witch balls. And witch balls are glass-blown spears, sometimes layered on the inside with silver, which were believed to ward off evil spirits. So in order for them the purpose was to attract and neutralize the evil eye by passing a witch ball, either by reflecting it back upon her or by puzzling her with the pattern. So the belief at that time was that the bright colors of the witch ball, after enticing the witch and possibly other darker spirits, would trap them inside it and then protect the home from negativity. And the witch balls gained popularity among the settlers of New England, who sometimes filled them with holy water for added protection.
So let me get this straight, just before you go on.
All right.
So witch balls were created to basically ward off evil spirits.
Yes.
And confuse them.
Right.
Okay, continue.
So, but then later they became what's known as Christmas ornaments, and
that's interesting. I never knew that about Christmas ornaments.
Right.
That's what the origin was. Didn't know that.
I've heard of witch balls and witch bottles too. When they go into some old American homes and mansions, they would actually find them buried or in a little corner in the room, and then they would identify it.
Same reason though.
The same reason, ward off evil. But they made them extra colorful during Christmas, and then I guess eventually they became Christmas ornaments.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it just reminds me of the tradition when people clank their glasses together. It's to drive the evil out of their drink so they don't consume it.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
That's why they clank glasses.
I believe that. Yeah. So do you have another custom that?
I don't have a custom. I have more stories. So if you want me to pepper stories in between the customs, we can do that too.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and do another story, then I'll do another custom.
Okay. Another strange Christmas mystery.
Right.
The hit and run of Kevin Showalter. On Christmas Eve, 1973, 20-year-old college student Kevin Showalter and his girlfriend were driving through New London, Connecticut, when their vehicle got a flat tire. Kevin pulled over and was in the midst of changing the tire when he was struck by a passing vehicle and killed. Kevin's mother soon sensed that something was wrong when she went to retrieve her son's personal effects from the scene, but was told they'd been lost and that his death probably would never be solved. Her subsequent investigation would uncover allegations of shoddy police work and potential cover-up. Harvey Malov, a former mayor of New London, was considered a potential suspect because he had driven through the area at the time of Kevin's death, but provided testimony which contradicted eyewitness accounts of the accident. A one-man grand jury determined that Malov was the most likely culprit, but there was not enough evidence to file criminal charges. Malov maintained his innocence, and in 1979, a man named Paul Hansen came forward to confess that he was the hit-and-run culprit. But by that point, the statute of limitations had expired, so no charges could be filed against Hansen. Another grand jury was convened, but they determined that there was no evidence to support Hansen's claim, so the inquiry was closed. Now, the case remained cold until 2005, when Hansen committed suicide.
Yikes.
He left behind a note once claiming responsibility for Kevin's death. Police decided to reopen the case, but when the local media requested transcripts from the earlier investigations, they were denied. In fact, the 3,000-page transcript from the original grand jury investigation on Malov had previously and mysteriously gone missing. To this day, Kevin Showalter's death is still officially unsolved.
That's sad.
Yes, that's a sad Christmas tale. Wow, so yeah, there you go. His death was never officially, has always been unsolved still.
That's sad.
Very sad.
Yes.
Nice Christmas story for everyone.
Really.
Do you have some more traditions?
Yeah, I do. This one takes place in Ireland, and the Christmas celebrations go beyond December 25th, and up until relatively recently, it involved a bird murder. So according to
murder?
a bird murder, a murder of a bird. Yeah. So according to the regional Irish tradition, St. Stephen's Day, which is the 26th, was celebrated by killing a wren, placing it on the top of a decorated pole and taking it from house to house in a procession, singing and demanding money.
Do you know what a wren is? Is that like a crow or something?
A wren, it's kind of a
How's it spelled?
W-R-E-N. I've seen wrens before. And they're kind of, aren't they brown birds? And they're kind of on the noisy side. And
I'm going to look it up right now.
yeah, go ahead, look it up.
As you continue.
Right. So anyway, they take it from house to house in a procession, singing and demanding money. And the precise origins of the idea of wren slaughter are unclear. It's a reference to an idea that the saint himself, Saint Stephen, was betrayed by a wren, or a legend about wrens exposing hiding Irish villagers during a Viking raid in the 700s.
Okay, so a wren is a songbird. Mm-hmm. It's very cute.
Who wants to kill that?
No, it's very cute. In fact, it looks like a little tiny robin or a little chickadee almost.
Well,
it's a little tiny bird, but they're songbirds.
They're beautiful. And if somebody came to my house with a cute little bird like that on top of a pole and asking for money, I'd just slam the door in their face.
I know, they're so cute.
Yeah,
The
come
brown
on.
passerine birds, mainly found in includes 88 species divided into 9 genera. Eurasian wrens occurred in the Old World, so that must be what they were referring to.
There's a traditional song called the Cuddy Wren, and I wonder if that has to do with this custom here. But the tradition known as going on the wren or jenny hunting is recorded all the way up to the 1930s in County Sligo in the Isle of Man. And the people who gave pennies to bury the wren might also receive a feather from the wren itself to protect against bad luck. Although I'm sure he wished he would have lived, right? While the precision persists in some parts of Ireland, wrens themselves pretty much remain untouched these days. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, I could see where the wren would give the soldiers' location away? Because they're songbirds, they would make a lot of noise. They're probably
Right.
because some birds are social animals. When they're together as a flock, they sing and they make more noise.
That would make sense.
I imagine if the birds were next to the people, they would start making noise, thus give away their location.
That would make sense. Although the killing part bothers me, I can see where.
Yeah, how would you exactly nail one of those little? This bird, folks, by the way, is about the size of your fist.
Yeah, he's a little
Maybe
thing.
a little bit smaller than your fist. I don't know how you would hammer that to Was it a board? He said.
Oh, to a pole, yeah.
How would you hammer that
And
to
then
a
take
pole?
it to a house singing and then asking for money from it?
Okay.
No.
Why would it give you money? You just killed it.
Yeah. No, asking money from the people at the door.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I wouldn't give somebody money if they show me a dead
Yeah.
bird.
Could you get out of my yard with your bloody bird stick?
Yeah, and then, yeah.
I'm not giving you money for that.
People had different ideas back
They
then.
did. Okay, that was out of Ireland, right?
That's out of Ireland.
Wow.
Now what do you have?
I don't have. I'm just. You keep going.
Okay, well, this one is from England. It dates back to the 1600s, and it's referenced in Shakespeare, Dickens, Jane Austen, and Agatha Christie. And it's actually, I have some old Victorian books where it's talked about too. The ideal of playing snapdragon or flapdragon on Christmas Eve is now lost, but it was a standard part of the season for hundreds of years, even though health and safety would now have a total fit about it. The British lexicographer Francis Gross wrote about the rules in 1811. Raisins and almonds being put into a bowl of brandy and the candles extinguished, the spirit is set on fire and the company scramble for raisins. That would burn your hands.
So everybody reaches in while it's on fire and grabs raisins.
Grabs the raisins.
Where's the fun come in?
That's what I wonder. They said the fun lay in the fact that the flaming raisins were boiling hot and had to be extinguished by putting them in your mouth. You could burn your tongue.
All right, I'm going to sit and enjoy and have fun with the game watching other people burn their tongues.
Right. They said it was particularly played by children, which doesn't surprise me. Children are brave
Here,
about
kids,
that.
I've just dumped some alcohol on these raisins, and I'm going to set them on fire. First one to shove them in your gob
And you're
wins.
going to burn your little mouths. I'm sorry.
First one to
Yeah.
shove them in your gob wins.
Well, they say unsurprisingly it died out in the 1900s as people started to be less happy about putting out fires and giving kids serious burns.
That's just weird.
Right, but the modern tradition of soaking the Christmas pudding in brandy and setting it alight just before eating probably came from the same custom.
Well, now I'm thinking of Cherry's Jubilee, where you light the cherries on fire.
Yeah, and I've had Cherry's Jubilee.
But
I love
wonder
it.
if that's where that comes from then.
Probably.
Something similar.
Have you ever had a flaming Christmas pudding before?
No.
Oh, I have. They're delicious.
Do you have to eat it before the fire goes out, or what?
You eat it after you eat it after the fire goes out.
Oh, yeah, no, I have had one.
It's the fire is for sure.
I have had one because they almost crystallize, and it turns it into caramel in the top.
Right.
Yes,
right.
I have had that.
They're good.
They're very good.
Yeah. So let's go into some more here. Now, if you lived in the late medieval period in England, you hung around fancy courts of noblemen, law schools, colleges, things like that. You would witness some hilarity around Christmas, and all of them elected a small boy around Christmas called the Lord of Misrule. Now, I'm going to correct this here. Grown men were also elected as the Lord of Misrule.
Yeah.
And
But what is it, though? Go ahead and tell me what it
okay.
is.
Medieval England held these celebrations where the social hierarchy was turned on its head a few times in that year, but the Lord of Misrule was supposed to be cute and funny. They were in charge of the parties of all the court, from elaborate balls to big feasts, and they were paid court fees as if they were real nobles. So cathedrals did the same. They elected a boy bishop every year from the boy choristers, who performed all the religious ceremonies of the cathedral from December 28 onwards. Now this I can believe are children here, including giving sermons. One sermon from a boy bishop involves that his wish that all his school teachers could be hanged.
How lovely. What a great Christmas joy.
Wow,
What a
obviously they
great
didn't tell
wish.
him, keep the subjects nice.
But
Okay.
I guess I don't understand what the point of all that would be, to put it on it, flip it, have the children be the bishops, and run the balls. Is it supposed to be humorous because of the way they turn out?
It could be.
Is that the idea?
Well, maybe because children have such different ideas that the adults would kind of laugh and think, while they gave their little sermons, or
Yeah.
I don't know, a Lord of Misrule. But apparently, a Lord of Misrule was covered in ivy leaves, and he would walk around with a staff, and he would come up to somebody and tell a joke, and
Reminds me of the Feast of Fools in Hunchback of Notre Dame.
it's probably from the same tradition.
The King
yeah.
of Fools, let's crown the King of Fools, the ugliest, the goofiest. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, very.
So I get, folks, this is what people used to do when they didn't have Netflix, just for those of you that are wondering.
Yeah, actually, I wouldn't mind attending a real old-fashioned Christmas feast, like from the Renaissance era, and seeing the Lord and Misrule. That would actually be kind of fun.
It would, if it's done correctly. I would only want
If
to
it's
go
done
if it was
correctly.
done traditionally and correctly.
Yeah, historically accurate is very important.
Yeah. Otherwise, why do it?
Now, this other one, that they say before turkey and all the trimmings and upper-class celebrations of Christmas, the Christmas feast,
Yeah.
in the 1500s in England might involve a particularly threatening centerpiece, a boar's head. We know from a carol dating back to the 1520s that it was part of the Christmas tradition to bring a boar's head with garlands gay of rosemary to the table, often while singing a particular song about its origins and the threat it posed to civilized people while alive. It was the first course, and it was meant to be eaten with mustard sauce, though an amazing recipe from a French cookbook in the 1420s involved gilding the boar's head with gold leaf and then putting the camphor dip candles in its mouth so that it looks like it's breathing fire. You probably did that in the courts for show.
If you think of all the traditional paintings of the era, boar's head was on the table all the time.
All the time. So to me, that's not creepy.
No, they probably ate the pork. I'm sure the head is just a garnish.
Right,
It's
exactly.
part of the whole tradition.
And if it was gilded gold, it was for show in a
Yeah.
court. Yeah.
But they had good pork dinner.
Yeah. And one college in Oxford continues a tradition of a boar's head in Christmas that appears to have been developed in the 19th century with an accompanying legend that a scholar wandering in the woods near the college came across a wild boar and defeated it by shoving his philosophy book down its throat.
Oh my
Now,
God.
what good's that going to do?
And how are you going to get a book down a boar's throat if it's still alive?
Yeah, how is that going to help?
I want to see how that happened exactly.
Yeah,
I question that.
that's some story, isn't
I could
it?
see if it was dead and then you put the book in there because it's an Oxford tie-in,
Right.
but I
Well,
couldn't see you do that while it was alive.
He said he did it to defend himself.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, I don't either.
Can you put a book in anybody's mouth?
And
animal
everybody
or-
believes that? Seriously.
Well, they didn't have Netflix, Verna.
Okay.
Just saying.
Jeez.
Even PBS, okay?
Life before Netflix, okay. A few other colleges and schools in the U.S. have the same tradition, but with less exciting origins. In the 16th and 17th century, in Russia, Tsarist Russia, before the Tsars were overthrown by the Russian Revolution, a key part of the Christmas celebration apparently involved the country's leader dressing as a peasant on Christmas Eve and leaving the palace by a secret exit and visiting prisons and poorhouses to distribute alms. Prisoners could be pardoned by the Tsar on the spot, while the Tsar was meant to provide this service in secret. In reality, poor people knew about it and came across all areas to crowd into Moscow, hoping to meet him on his almsgiving walk.
Didn't Prince Albert do that?
I think so.
I remember something about Prince Albert visiting prisons and poorhouses just to see the conditions.
Yeah.
But he didn't reveal who he was. He just wanted to see it for himself.
Well, I kind of wish he lived longer and did it more, because Victorian England, the poor suffered so badly there.
Well, and that was his personal crusade, was to help better the people as a whole.
Yeah.
But then he died, which is a shame because he probably would have changed things. a little
He would
bit.
have changed things, yeah, for sure. Now, here's another tradition that we all know, the word wassail, and we all know the tale about here we go wassailing.
Wassailing a wabbit?
No.
Okay.
Wassail like in the drink.
Oh, I don't never heard of a wassail. Just a wassaily wabbit.
You're silly. You've never had a wassail?
What the hell's a wassail, Verna? Tell me.
Okay, I'll go into it. Sorry. Okay, from the medieval period in England onwards, it involved sharing apple-spiked drinks like lamb's wool.
Ooh,
Lamb's wool?
sounds disgusting.
It involved heating apples so they exploded in boiling alcohol, then adding spices and wishing each other good cheer.
It's spiced.
Now,
It's
it's spice wine.
yeah.
Some
Apple
people
cider.
took, spice apple cider, but there's also a wassail wine that's spiced too.
What's with the sheep's wool? What's that about?
I don't know. But some people took vast bowls of wassail from house to house in order to spread the goodwill. In apple-centric rural areas, the tradition of wassailing involved the 12 days of Christmas, and it took on more elaborate forms, some of which survive to this day. So to wassail meant to visit the orchard in a giant procession on the 12th day of Christmas, singing happy songs through the trees to ensure a good harvest, protecting them from evil spirits.
Before
And
Netflix.
yeah, and shooting and hollering
sings
to
to
scare
trees?
any ghosts away, which I don't know what's that good's that going to do? The ghosts can't eat the apples.
I'm still stuck on singing to the trees, but okay.
Okay. So sometimes asking small boys to hang toast-soaked cider on the boughs to attract good spirits in the form of birds.
God, people really needed something to do.
They did. Everybody would then share a wassailing cup full of cider and have a really good time.
Pour me another glass of that wassail
Okay, I've had wassail.
while I soak my toast.
I never had apple wassail. I've had wassail, but I've had it in the form of a wine punch with the traditional spices and the cinnamon. It's really good.
I mean, is it technically it's spiced cider, correct?
Spiced cider, but I guess I've only had it at spiced wine.
I've never heard it called that. I guess that's the difference.
Yeah.
So if I go to your house and I see soaked toast hanging all over your house, I'm going to know you've gone overboard.
I've gone overboard, yeah.
Then you're singing to trees? Yeah.
Where the heck am I going to find trees to sing to?
Apple trees, too, to sing to.
Not in my neighborhood.
No, definitely.
But
She's
you
in
can-
Safeway singing to the produce aisle.
However, you can come over for spiced wine with cinnamon, and I'm happy to share some cups and
There you
enjoy. Okay. So we have another one, the celebration of Mary Lude. Okay, if I'm mispronouncing that, sorry, folks.
Mary Lude. Sounds like a drag name.
L-W-Y. It does.
Oh, that's Mary Lude.
It's LWYD. It's known as Holy Mary. And it originated in South Wales, and it's celebrated in the region of Glamorgan.
Okay,
And it's one of the creepiest traditions in the world.
all right.
The Mary Lude itself is a dead horse
Ugh.
dressed up and put on a pole. And the Welsh government describes the celebration. People made a horse figure from a horse's skull with decorative eyes and ears attached. They adorn it with colorful reins, bells, and ribbons, wrapped it in with a white sheet, and they carry it around on a pole. That's as bad as carrying the bird. The Mary Lude and its party would go door to door singing and challenging the families inside to a battle of rhyming insults in Welsh.
Okay, they could use Hulu.
Can you imagine? Everybody
Challenging your
shouting
neighbors.
insults from each other. I mean, there might
So
be.
you have a horse skull on a staff,
Yeah,
wrapped in white sheets, adorned with bells and ribbons.
all the trimmings,
And you've
yeah.
made fake eyes and ears, and you go, what do you knock on the door and shake it in their face and say, I challenge you to insult me.
Yeah.
Merry
Again,
Christmas.
time to slam the door in their face.
Yeah, so we're moving.
So at the end of the Battle of Wits, the insults, the group would be invited into the house for refreshment. So I guess they can temporarily put away their bad
So
feelings.
do you do the insults first and then come in for refreshments?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to insult each other first.
Gotcha.
Can you imagine? I mean, if they really... Never.
Well, there are restaurants where that's their thing, is to have the insulting waitress serve your table.
Oh, yeah. Back in old San Francisco, wasn't that old or that long ago, but there was this one waitress. She didn't mean to be an insulting waitress, but she worked in Woolworths. And she used to come up and
She hated her life.
She did. She wore, her stockings were always torn. Now, if anybody remembers Woolworths on Powell Street, you remember this lady. Her
It's the
stockings...
Gap store now, I think, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Her stockings were always torn. She wore a lot of makeup. She always wore her hair poofed up. And she would come up and say, "What do you want?" and throw the plates and throw the cups at you and everything. And Linda always wanted to eat at that restaurant in Woolworths just so she can get the insulting waitress.
Oh,
She
so she
loved
liked
it.
her.
Linda liked it.
You know
yeah.
what? People probably knew that and came back.
Right. So
Where is she now?
who knows? I'd like to find that out. But I mean, she kept her job, and I think people were used to her.
When did that Woolworths disappear?
I think it disappeared in the mid-'80s.
Oh, it was? Okay, that far. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So, anyway, this celebration dates back to pre-Christian times. It seems to once been a part of the New Year's celebrations, but now it's become part of Welsh Christmas folklore. And you thought your mother's old Christmas decorations were the creepiest thing about your festive season.
Mom, can I put up the witch's balls?
Do you have the horse skull? Oh, yeah, that bird's out
No,
there.
I'm busy hammering the bird to the pole. Yeah, Christmas was very, very active.
Yeah, and this is all I have for the customs, unless you have some more.
No, that's a lot. That's great.
Yeah, these are great. I
So-
mean, they're creepy, but they're great.
Yeah, so if you guys want to start by putting some money in your shoes so Jesus could come visit. But once Jesus knows you hammer birds to poles and insult people and hold up dead horse skulls and insult others.
And if you want to rename your ornaments witch balls.
Yes, witch balls. Yeah, that's kind of cool though. But that's interesting where some of that came from, because I would never have known most of that.
No, and I know there's other customs we haven't even covered, like La Befana, the Italian Christmas witch, and then there's the big cat character from Iceland. Yeah. We didn't cover those, but look those up, folks.
So if you have some rum and you have some raisins in your house, folks, get a big old bowl, have all the little kids gather around, and then you fill that bowl with the raisins and you soak them into that rum, and then light it on fire and tell all the kids to reach in and grab some and
put it in your mouth.
Pop it in their mouth, because that's a snapping dragon.
That's what's called. Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Wow.
Yeah.
I could see where that would be a problem nowadays.
It would be. I mean,
can you imagine if you had 5-year-olds when you weren't home? Let's play Snapdragon.
And then their little mouths are burning.
And the house is on fire.
Yeah.
And they're all drunk.
Yep.
Wow. Ho, ho, ho.
Yeah. So lots of. I mean, they're interesting.
Yeah.
I don't. They're. Some of them are a little.
But you got to think some of the rituals you read probably are based on even older ones that have more meaning that those people probably didn't even know. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Because Christmas traditions are passed on. Sometimes you know the meaning of everything. Sometimes you know the meaning of some of it. But some of it you do, but you don't really remember or know why you're doing it or why it's part of the ritual.
Yeah.
And I'm sure with those that you read, we think they're crazy, and they are in crazy Christmasdom.
But you had to be there in the culture at the time, and you had to.
There was probably a reason
there was a reason for it.
Used a horse skull. There's probably a reason you wrapped it in a white bed sheet. There's probably reasons for all of that.
There's a reason for all of it. Yeah.
We just don't know.
We have to be open to the customs and the culture and figure out why they did that, rather than just saying, "Oh, that's creepy."
Yeah, it is a little creepy though.
Yeah, it is. But
all right, folks. So there you go. So now that you've probably finished your eggnog and rum, and your fire's been going like ours has, it's nice and toasty in here now. Kick back, have a great holiday, and make sure you tune into our new episode for this week, which will be live tomorrow morning. And until then, we'll talk to you soon.
Good night.
Have a good holiday.
Happy holidays.
Royalty-free, copyright-free music by Ross Bugden.